Hello, everybody. It's another Friday, and welcome to Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. This is an interesting program today with all the stuff breaking about DeShaun Watson. The panel is, we have a special guest, of course, but Peter is here. Rox is here for the special occasion. She'll be herding traffic in the chat room. So if you have questions, she'll be the one bringing them up so that so that Blake can speak on them. Bronk, of course, is here. Derek from DF Sports, and our guest, Blake Weiner, an attorney from Richmond, Virginia, and who's kind enough on short notice to come in here and help us out and try to figure out some of this stuff. Today, the first thing that happened in my world, which I had trouble sleeping last night, was that the second grand jury declined. We'll start there. Blake, this is two now. Is this unusual, or is this something that would have been expected?
Yeah, so I would say this is beyond unusual. I mean, a lot of people, even if you're not in the legal community, have probably heard the phrase that a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich, which is just a stupid phrase. I don't like it, but it basically just means that it really means if you want an indictment, if the prosecutor's office wants to get an indictment, they can get an indictment because the way a grand jury works is it's pretty secretive. It's usually in the basement of a courthouse or the district attorney's office. And what will happen is the prosecutor goes into the room, and it's just the grand jurors. And every jurisdiction is different. It's a state to state situation, but they almost all operate the same. And so the prosecutor goes in the grand jury room, and they decide how they want the case to proceed. They can decide, I don't want to present any exculpatory evidence. I just want to present my best case. I just want to present the good facts for us. And they could just put on a witness. They can show photos. It's just the prosecutor's ballgame. They get to make up the rules completely. And it's so one-sided for the prosecution that a lot of people in the legal community, it's sort of an academics, sort of look at the grand jury process as a phony system, sort of like it's BS, and it's just there to make people think there's due process, but it's not really due process. That's how easy it is to get an indictment. And so, first of all, when you had the first grand jury in Texas not issue an indictment, the first thought I had was something's up here, something's sketchy. I don't know what's going on with this district attorney's office. I don't know who these people are. I don't know if something slimy is happening, but this doesn't make sense to me. When the second grand jury didn't issue an indictment, which is now a different county, different district attorneys, different assistant district attorneys, that eliminated all sketchiness to me. And what that just simply showed was these cases are not what people think they are. We were sort of presented over a year ago as almost in the situation where it was like DeShaun Watson is almost like the O.J. Simpson of sexual assault, where it's so clear, it's absurd, and we just need to move the process along. And now we're here, and to me, I feel like all we can conclude is that we were sort of misled about what's really going on here.
Now, did you find it unusual that the attorney for the plaintiff, I believe his name is Tony Busby, after getting shot down in Harris County, would have taken it to the second county with only one new person involved? And is the intent to even go for a criminal case, or is this just to heighten public awareness for the civil phase?
Well, I would caution against confusing Tony Busby's role in the criminal situations, in the criminal cases, because he's not actually, he's representing these women in their civil cases. So presumably he's, taking some sort of measure to maybe communicate with the district attorney's office on their behalf, but he's not making decisions here. I mean, think about it. In anybody listening, think about your situation. If you are the victim of a robbery, what do? You call the police, you fill out a complaint, and then it goes from there, and the prosecutor's office takes it. You don't ever usually get a lawyer. That's usually not how it really works. The only reason Busby's involved in these criminal situations is because he's representing them on the civil side. And so I wouldn't want to bring Busby in too much into this criminal situation. He's talking about it a lot for reasons that are probably related to just strengthening his plaintiff's civil case. I mean, everything that goes on in the criminal cases is just going to make his clients in his civil cases look more credible. So that's probably why he's talking about it. But with respect to there being, one criminal case in the second grand jury, that's just a jurisdictional issue. That's not actually related to evidence or new charges or anything like that. It's simply just that occurred there because that's where the alleged crime occurred.
Yeah. And at any time, anyone on the panel who wants to jump in and ask a question, go ahead.
I do have one, Blake, and you have already answered this on a Twitter space, but I want to ask you here since it's on the program. I think it's great that DeShaun Watson has been very, very steadfast of I'm innocent. I want to keep everything open. He's kind of stayed in that place this entire time. Now, today he talked about the whole settling thing very briefly and how, if I'm correct, he's not wanting to do that. He's wanting to keep fighting and trying to rebuild his image and credibility. In terms of that, when it comes to a potential countersue, how long is that timetable? Do you think that is likely, given what he's wanting to do so far?
Yeah, I've been asked. I never actually even thought about the countersuing situation until I started doing some of the Twitter spaces and talking to people on there. I mean, to me, countersuing is, and again, everything I say, I mean, I don't know DeShaun Watson personally. I don't know his lawyer personally. I'm just an attorney who's here to talk about it, just from my personal knowledge of my experience of what's going on. But if I'm representing DeShaun Watson and he says to me, what do you think about filing, defamation, libel charges, whatever? I'm saying, why would we do that? First of all, you have all the money in the world. And these massage therapists, based on what's in the complaints, I mean, Busby paints a pretty unflattering picture of their financial situation. They don't have any money, and you don't need any money. And it's going to cost you money. You're going to have to pay your attorney to litigate these cases. You're going to have to spend time litigating these cases. You're going to have to show up for depositions again. So it's going to cost you time, money, stress, and you're not going to get any money out of it. So what's the incentive for him? The only incentive would be public relations, publicity. But if he's beat these 2 grand jury indictments, if he can get these cases on the civil side dismissed or settle them quietly in the future or win at trial, that's the best publicity he's ever going to get. In fact, if he goes out and tries to countersue, it's kind of going to make him look like the enemy again. People are going to be saying, oh my God, this guy won't let it go. Now he's getting on the attack, because people usually aren't going to change their minds about their view of guilt or not. And so I just don't think it's likely.
Let me ask you this. There's an old saying, justice delayed is justice denied. The notion of how long this could take and how long this can be protracted out by the attorney, the plaintiff's attorney, it could have a bearing on how the NFL chooses to deal with this. Is there a strategy as far as length of time is concerned? Because if you can stretch this out theoretically into the beginning of the season, well into the season, would that give the NFL more leverage on their end to be more punitive?
I don't really know, because I don't think anybody has any idea what the NFL is really doing. And anybody who cares about the NFL and watches the NFL will probably be able to state pretty clearly over the years that there's no consistency. I mean, the NFL will suspend someone 8 games for something that's not really proven. They will suspend someone 4 games for something that's on video. They'll issue suspensions when there's not even a case brought to a grand jury, like the Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt got suspended for 8 games. It was caught on video. The police didn't even, I don't think she wanted to press charges. The police didn't even move forward, and there was no civil case. They suspended him half the season, right? And so I don't really know how the NFL situation would work here, because I don't really think anybody knows what the NFL is really doing. So without that, I mean, it's entirely possible delaying it could be worse for him from an NFL perspective, because it's just always hanging over his head. It's possible getting over with ASAP is bad. If I had to guess from what I've read, it sounds like the NFL is just doing their own investigation, and the investigation is somewhat recent. I believe I read that they just started it after the criminal issue was over. And so I think they're just going to do their investigation, and when they reach the end of it, when they reach their conclusions, they're going to make a finding, and it's not going to matter where he is in his cases.
As far as this, go ahead.
I was just going to ask kind of a basic, like, overall question. So obviously there's a lot of women accusing DeShaun of many different things, and some of them have gone through the criminal side. So I was just wanting to hear from your background, what are some of the incentives or maybe possible outcomes besides money for doing it through the civil court?
For the plaintiffs?
Yes. Instead of just all of them doing criminal besides like money, or is it just money the only outcome?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much just money. One thing I do want to say, though, that it's been a little bit of a hot topic on Twitter is I don't understand why society has reached this inconsistent point where we all live every day trying to make money. I mean, if you tell your friends and family the only thing I care about is making money, they won't look at you like you're crazy. They're going to think, oh, it's normal. It's what the world is doing nowadays. But as soon as someone is victimized and they think, well, how can I make money off of this? Everybody immediately says, oh, this is strange. Oh, I don't believe this person. They just want the money. I don't understand why that's inconsistent. I don't understand why these women can't be victims, as they say they are, and also have the first thought in their mind be, can I get money out of this? I've heard some people say, no, they should have gone to the police first. Why? Maybe they don't care about prison. Maybe what happened to them in their mind was inappropriate and disrespectful and technically an assault, but they don't really want to see him go to jail for it. That doesn't really do anything for them. Maybe they don't like the criminal justice system, but what they do want is money. And so they go to a lawyer and they say, can I get money out of this? And objectively they can. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's pretty inconsistent for people to have these views about money where all of a sudden, once you want it, when you're a victim, it means you're not credible. I just don't buy that.
What percentage in your vast experience of civil cases like this end up in settlement as opposed to somebody exonerating themselves?
I mean, settlement in civil cases is like, it's almost like asking, when you go to a restaurant, what are the odds that you're going to leave before you get your dinner? It probably happens. It's probably happened in all of our lifetimes at one point, right? I can think of a time when I was in high school where we had to wait an hour for our appetizers and we just said, we're out of here, right? But when you go to a restaurant, you're almost always going to eat there. It's the same thing in reverse. When you are in a civil litigation, eating at the restaurant is basically settling. It's like the idea that you're going to go to trial is everybody's going to threaten it, and everybody's always going to act like it's going to. I mean, DeShaun Watson says, I'm not settling. I'm not settling. Do you intend to settle? That's not my intent. If he doesn't settle, it will be incredibly, incredibly, incredibly surprising. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Anything can happen. I'm sure there are cases that don't settle sometimes. I mean, I'm not sure. I know there are. I've been a part of them. But when you look at I believe there's statistics on this. Something like 95+%, I believe, of civil cases do settle. And so it's same thing with the criminal justice system. Something like 99% of criminal cases have a plea, and that's because when you're dealing with a jury, everything's out the window. everything's out the window. You could have the strongest case. If I have a client who has the strongest case in the world, and he or she asks me the day before trial, are we going to win this? The best thing I'll say is maybe, probably is probably the strongest I'll ever give. You're never really going to give more than probably, no matter how strong your case is, because you never know what 12 people are going to do. Would it shock you to find 12 people who are going to say today they think DeShaun Watson is a rapist? That wouldn't surprise me at all. Would it shock you to find 12 people today that say DeShaun Watson is the victim of a grand extortion scheme involving the Houston Texans ownership and Tony Busby? That wouldn't shock me at all either. So what if some of these people end up on your jury? You just don't know. And so for that reason, I just think that I would be absolutely shocked if it doesn't settle.
My experience in business is that these things always get settled. And the reason is the longer it goes on, the person who has a reputation to salvage, there comes a point where everything's on the table and it just comes down to horse trading. For lack of a better word, it comes down to negotiating something that's acceptable to both parties. I think the notion, what stood out in DeShaun's press conference today was this notion that he's going to ride tall in the saddle and he's going to go for the exoneration. I know that's what you say up front. When you get in the trenches, more often than not, that's not what happens. So.
Of course. I mean, that has to be your bargaining position. Can you imagine how much you would, crucify DeShaun Watson in his legal position if he got into the press conference today and they said, are you thinking about settling? He's like, I want to. Why would he do that? That does not help his bargaining position in any of his cases. It signals to the plaintiff's attorney that he's willing to settle. I mean, you want to have the strongest possible leverage you can. And the leverage he has is money and time, and something these women don't necessarily have. And so he's going to want to make them think, I'm not settling. And that way, maybe one day if he gives them a call and says, how about, $20,000? Maybe then they'll say, oh my God, he wasn't even going to settle. Now we'll take $20,000 shorts. Who knows?
Hey, Blake, I wanted to ask you, so you're expecting a settlement based on everything that I'm understanding. What is the timetable on all of these settlements? Because obviously with a large amount of cases, it's going to go longer. Do you see this stretching out into the season? Do you think it's going to get done before the season starts? Where do you think the timetable is there?
I mean, it's such a crapshoot. You just have no idea. You have no idea what's important to him. You have no idea what's important to them. If we're just talking strictly about, what the court process is like right now, they're in discovery. They're doing depositions. After deposition, depositions take a while. Discovery takes a while. That might take a couple months. Then after that, you file motions. Then maybe there's some continuance. That could take a couple more months. Then after that, you got to wait for the judge to rule. That could take this could all take time and time. He could decide tomorrow. He could settle all of these cases tomorrow if he wanted to. You think each one of these women are going to take $10 million a piece? Of course they would. So if he wanted to, he could settle tomorrow. If he wanted to, he could settle the day before trial. If he wanted to, he could settle the day of trial. If I'm him or if I'm his lawyer, what I'm probably thinking is, money is not an issue for us. So let's keep doing these depositions. We'll keep, you can keep paying me. It's great. It does no skin off your back. You just signed a deal for what, like $250 million. So we'll do these depositions maybe in 3 or 4 months when this isn't the hot topic anymore and everybody else is talking about something else and nobody cares about DeShaun Watson in these cases and they're bored with it, as usually happens. Then maybe it'll just be a little, blip on ESPN. Breaking news, DeShaun Watson settled his cases and everybody's like, we were done with that, man. We saw that press conference months ago. We're over it. And so that's probably what I would do.
You saw paperwork, and the paperwork that you were putting online on Twitter, that were summaries of this situation as far as what plaintiffs were claiming. A few of these things really bothered you. If you were the defense attorney in this case, what do you find most glaring and alarming as far as the claims that are being made?
So a couple of things. A couple of things I find glaring and alarming from a plaintiff's perspective in a bad way, and then from a defendant's perspective in a bad way. So, for example, one thing that looks it just doesn't look very good for the plaintiffs in this case is that the stories are, and every case is different. There's 22, they're all different. But for the most part, there's a pattern here. A lot of the stories are, they don't flow very well. So there will be a random sentence where it says, DeShaun flips over, exposes his penis. She tries to cover him up. And then there's some weird transition. And then it just says he ejaculates. And I'm just like, I know everybody's different, but how does that work? I don't practically, it sounds gross to say, but that doesn't sound like a typical situation. And then there, from his perspective, what sounds very bad is kind of the stuff that's out in public, which is if almost every single case begins with DeShaun Watson DMs her on Instagram. She's never met him before. She doesn't know who he is. She's only been doing this a couple of months or a couple of years. And then one thing that was very glaring was there was one case where he flew somebody out. He put him on a plane and he flew him, over state lines for a massage. Personally, I actually don't find that to be that problematic if you accept, as I do, that his defense should be and probably will be that, yeah, he was soliciting these women for sex. This is how he had sex with women. He was powerful. He was famous. He's good looking. He sends these women who, are looking for an opportunity, a message. Hey, will you give me a massage? It's implied he thinks that they know what's going on. It's implied for most of them that they know what's going on. They show up, and it happens organically. I think that's probably what happens often with him. It seems anybody who wants to say things like, no, 22 masseuses, maybe he likes different. We can have that argument. I'm not that interested in it. To me, that's not that compelling. I wouldn't be surprised though. And this is why I say it doesn't concern me so much that he does this. It wouldn't surprise me if this is common in the NFL. That's something that the Browns said in the press conference that stood out to me, as they kept saying, we reviewed the case, we reviewed the facts, we are comfortable with who he is. And to me, what I kept thinking is what they really meant was in the NFL, in this professional sports, seeing what he did, it's normal.
Yeah.
It's maybe not normal in society, but we're comfortable saying, yeah, this guy can be our quarterback. Just like, we don't know what kind of guy Baker Mayfield is off the field. There was an allegation a couple of years ago. I don't know if everybody knows this, but there's an allegation a couple of years ago from a woman who was on a radio show that said Baker Mayfield did something while he was married where he basically sent her a DM and they met up. That was just one woman, but who knows how many women are like that. And so it just wouldn't surprise me if this is really common.
The other thing that really kind of the press today at the press conference was really honing in on that there were 40 different massage therapists, and that's an excessive number. But I can tell you that I was a regular user of bodywork for tennis playing and things of that nature. And over the course of 2015 to 2018, I had 8 different massage therapists, but I had 2 domiciles, one in South Carolina, one here in Florida, right? The thing is that he's traveling all the time.
Yes.
In his career. So, I found it interesting in one regard that they would hone in on that. The thing that really made me feel negative toward DeShaun and the case that he's likely to put up is that you have professional people who work with you on muscular imbalance issues and things of that nature. And whenever I needed a new massage therapist, I did not go to Instagram. I would ask the person because these people do float in and out. That's true. And I say, do you know of anybody who is responsible and capable like you are? And invariably they would know, and they would turn you over to that person. So there's a real vagary there for me.
Yeah, you're going to get a large fight from me on that. To me, that's crap. I mean, I'm not saying you're. I'm not saying.
No. Tell me why.
So here's why. So obviously, I assume everything you said is 100% the truth, and it doesn't sound unreasonable, right? Here's the problem. Here's why it's giving him a little bit too much of the benefit of the doubt. First of all, he works for the Houston Texans. If he genuinely was just interested in getting massages, even though he was traveling a lot, I'm sure there's somebody who works for the Houston Texans
That's
who
right.
can organize all his massages without even him having to lift a finger. He called him and said, I want a massage Monday, Thursday at 2:00 here. You take care of it. Okay, that's number one. He wasn't doing that. He was going on Instagram himself. Number two, if I'm going to ask you, what do you think these massage therapists look like? Do you think any of them are going to be
washerwomen?
Hideous? Do you think they're going to be old? Do you think they're going to be, unattractive? Do you think
And
any of
how
them
were
are
they?
men?
On what basis were they selected?
Right. So, and listen, technically we're making an assumption because the answer is we don't really know. But nobody, not even his side, has floated, through the press. By the way, some of these women are 50, just because that would matter. If that was true, they would do it, right? They haven't done that because they're all in their 20s, low 30s. They're probably all very good looking, and there's a reason for that, right? Like, why is he flying someone from another state? He doesn't even know this person.
That's
he
right.
thinks she's the best masseuse in the world. He's flying somebody. He's paying for her flight.
But that's why it looks bad to me.
Of course,
It's
it is
horrible optics.
But it's not horrible optics. This is what I wish would have happened, because then this would have exploded the world. People's heads would have exploded, but then they would have realized the hypocrisy and their sort of casting stones, which is, what if DeShaun Watson just said in his press conference, yes, I use Instagram to have sex with beautiful women. So you have an issue with that? People would know what to do with themselves, because there really isn't a problem with that. The problem is that he doesn't want to say that because it looks icky. But I think it would be brave of him to say, forget what looks icky. I'm just going to be honest, and I'm going to be upfront. And I think that would actually make a lot of people who are skeptical think, maybe this guy's really trustworthy, because there's nobody more trustworthy than someone who tells you something you don't want to hear, right? If you want to make sure someone's trustworthy, say, tell me something I don't want to hear, because then they're not just going to feed you lines to make you happy. If he said that, he's not feeding anybody lines to make him happy, but he's also providing a reasonable excuse.
Yeah. Go ahead, Moo.
One viewer asked a question: in a civil case, is it just a judge or is there a jury involvement?
So you can waive your right to a jury in a civil case. Every jurisdiction is different. Federal court's different from state court, but generally speaking, in a civil case, you have a right to a jury. Generally speaking.
Yeah. Hey, Blake. So one of the things that we kept hearing repeatedly today, in addition to him standing on the point of he's innocent, the one thing that he kept saying was, once this stuff is settled, I'd be more than happy to talk about it and kind of give the full story. Now, I know you had talked about this earlier, but can you kind of explain that and what your thoughts are on him saying that? Because I personally understand why he's saying that, but at the same time, I think from an optics standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. What's your thoughts on that and him continuously saying that?
Yeah, to me, that's also crap. It's crap. I mean, first of all, you think that when all this is over, when the dust is settled, the criminal cases are over, the civil cases are over, and it's just him by himself, no more suspension, and an ESPN reporter calls and says, can we talk about this now? You think he's going to say, let's keep this going? Yeah. No, he's going to say, shh, no, it's over. Let's move on. Please, I'd like to move on with my life. So this idea that he doesn't want to talk about it now, but he's going to talk about it later once he can finally have it, people forget about it, is not believable. And then on top of that, that's a constant excuse people use. It frustrates me because it's taking advantage of people's ignorance on how the system works, the legal system. And I always think of a really bad, an egregious example is when Tim Tebow played for the Jets, and Aaron Hernandez was on trial for murder. Tim Tebow used to be a teammate of Aaron Hernandez at the University of Florida, and they were asking Tim Tebow, or maybe he was with the Patriots, they were asking Tim Tebow questions in an interview, in a press conference on the field, and he kept saying, I can't comment. It's an ongoing criminal investigation. I can't comment. What are you talking about? You're a private citizen, and someone's private in a private course of a conversation being recorded saying, what do you think about this? It's not interfering with a criminal investigation to say, I'm shocked. It's complete BS, and it's just done to basically say, I'm giving you an excuse so you'll get off my back. And that's kind of what the Browns did too when they said that their lawyer told them not to talk to these victims because it was interfering with a criminal investigation. I mean, maybe their lawyer told them that. Maybe their lawyer was being genuine, and listen, their lawyer's not wrong that it can't hurt you not to. It can only hurt you from a public relations standpoint not to. But could the Cleveland Browns have talked to these women or talked to their attorney about the case without getting into legal trouble? Of course they could have. What's the interference? How are you interfering with a criminal investigation? It doesn't make any sense. You're asking someone questions. It's not interfering with an investigation.
Oh boy.
We do have a question in the chat room. Why do you think that, at a minimum, prosecutors haven't pursued the easier solicitation or conspiracy to commit prostitution?
Well, I mean, first of all, in a lot of jurisdictions now, that is presuming that they were offering sex, and every single one of these women is saying the exact opposite. So I don't really understand the question. If you go to a police officer and say, this man sexually assaulted me while I was massaging him, why would the police officer say, are you a prostitute? It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand.
Yeah,
I had a question. You can go ahead.
Yeah, Blake, it's Brunk here. I got a couple of questions. I live in England, and we've been going through the Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew thing very heavy here. So the idea of some very wealthy celebrity flying people in that he doesn't know for massages smacks of that whole Epstein, Prince Andrew whole situation. I think that, although I've actually not read anybody actually make that connection. That's what I think is the unsaid thing going on here, that this Watson thing has come on the back of that whole settlement thing that's going on, and makes it look bad. But his employer is the Cleveland Browns now, right? So wouldn't the Browns have the right to suspend? Why does the NFL have the right to suspend players and not the actual team? Do they have a right to suspend players too? I mean, it seems like sporting organizations have this extra right over and above what employer rights have in the fact that they can stop people from working for a particular employer. Could you comment about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in employment, every employment's different. Employment agreements are just contracts. You can make a contract say whatever you want. You could have a contract that says you'll work for me only on Tuesdays between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and if you're late, I fire you. You can have a contract that says you work every day of the week, and I can't fire you unless you get naked and run in the street. You can have a contract that says anything. So the collective bargaining agreement that they have, I haven't read it. I want to be one of those people that says read the agreement. I would imagine that it's it covers everything, and it clearly says that here's what would allow an NFL team to suspend a player for cause, thus eliminating guaranteed money. Here's what allows the NFL to suspend a player and eliminating money. And I know if any of you are pay attention for the in the past about football suspensions. It actually is pretty common that it'll come up in the news where a player will either get released or get suspended, and whether or not the money is paid becomes a topic of dispute. Most recently, I remember it happened with Antonio Brown and the Raiders. When he was calling his GM a cracker and throwing his cleats on the field, they cut him and tried not to pay him. I actually don't even know how that ended. It might still be going on, the dispute. And then I remember it happened with Terrell Owens too, I think with the Eagles. So it happens.
So, I mean, I'm wondering whether the NFL will try to minimize the publicity of this incident just for their own benefit, for the league's benefit. Do you see that at all as a possibility?
I don't, because to me, the toothpaste is already out of the tube so much that it's almost like there's no stopping this train. You can only get on it. And I think the NFL's going to, this is just my opinion, and I'm not an NFL expert, so I could look stupid in a couple of weeks on any of this stuff. But if I had to guess, an educated guess, it would not surprise me at all if he's suspended for a full year, because this is just how I work at it. And frankly, my issue might be that I'm looking at it logically, and a lot of NFL suspensions are not logical. But if they want to be logical, you suspended Kareem Hunt 8 games, half a season, for what he did. It's all on video. Everybody knows what he did. If you're asking me after watching that video, what do I think looks worse? What Kareem Hunt did on video, or this whole DeShaun Watson situation? I would say DeShaun Watson seems like he's doing worse things. And so if you gave Hunt 8 games, you got to give Watson at least 8. So now 8's the starting point. And then you factor in, if they only give him 8, the NFL's worried about PR. I mean, they're always worried about PR. And I think that they're concerned that they're going to come off light on this sort of like historic situation.
Okay.
Now, one thing Busby said that was interesting. He said that they were in the process handling more complaints from women, and he made a reference that there might be an overflow that another attorney might be able to handle. And I was just kind of, again, you're an attorney. I'm a guy listening to this, and it's like shop talk. What does all this really mean?
So that's a good question. I've heard that a little bit. I didn't read that. This is recent, right?
Yes, this was after the second grand jury, his statement after the second grand jury declined.
Yeah. So a couple of things. First is, I would imagine, if I'm Tony Busby, that every single day since he got these cases, he has somebody on his team trying to get more. I would guess that's what I would do. Maybe he doesn't do that. That's what I would do, because this is such a bombshell situation. If you want to flood the zone with shit, the best thing to do is get more clients, because it muddies the issue even more.
And size of judgment, correct?
Not just the size of the judgment, but even public perception, even, making DeShaun Watson feel like, I got to get rid of these cases. This is overwhelming. There's 30, 40. I mean, the size matters here. And so if I'm Busby, I'm constantly looking for new women to bring as complainants. Again, this doesn't mean they're lying. They could be truthful women, right? He's just looking for people who have this experience or say they do. And it's been a year, right? So it's taken him a year, and he hasn't found any more new women. And conveniently, basically the worst day of his case's life is, this last week, where you lose 2 indictments. You don't get 2 indictments. It's the worst. It's the biggest blow to his cases. How convenient that during that time, he says something so strong like that to make his cases sound like there could be more. To me, it's just, he's not lying, right? Because I believe the quote was something like, there could be, right?
Yes.
There could be aliens tomorrow.
That's correct.
I could win the lottery tomorrow. I'm not lying to you. It's unlikely. Yeah.
So in all these cases, there was no third party involved. There was nobody out there procuring these masseuses for Watson. It was just Watson had the relationship with the women, and there was nobody in
direct contact.
There wasn't anybody else involved.
There actually was a couple of cases. On my Twitter timeline, I have some of the cases summarized, about half of them. I haven't gotten to the rest yet. But in a couple of my summaries, there were cases where it was rare, but there were cases where the woman was connected with DeShaun Watson, like through her supervisor, through a legitimate source. That has happened at least once.
Okay, and all these women are over. They're all adults. They're not.
Yeah, there's no allegation that any of them are underage.
Yeah, they're all adult Well, that's
Who's
excellent.
trying to ask another question on the panel?
I had another question.
Sure.
So I been reading some of the stories that have been coming out, and I saw an interview that Houston put out like about a year ago with a woman who had the whole thing about the second grand jury, the charge about him ejaculating while she was performing a massage, and throughout she was talking about how she how it came across to me that she was basically unlicensed, and she thought it would be good for her business for him to come in, and she continued to do the service. So for some of these women who might be unlicensed, is anything going to come towards them, or does it hurt the case or anything, or will they face charges or no?
No, they're not, I mean, they're not going to face charges. I mean, prosecutors' offices and police officers, they're not, as much as people might not think so, they're not like looking to catch people on technicalities. And a lot of them even have policies where if you're a victim and you come to them to complain of a crime, they usually won't, prosecute you for the crime for your underlying crime, unless it was like a felony, maybe. But if you're like an unlicensed masseuse, they're not going to prosecute them for that, and they might get in trouble with their local board. I don't know anything about masseuse licensing, and if their board finds out they're unlicensed, maybe they could get fined or something or face a civil penalty. But with respect to his civil cases, I don't think that means anything at all.
Okay.
I mean, it would certainly go to his defense, so he could use that to say basically, assuming it goes to trial, plaintiffs put on their case, it's defense's turn. They could make it look like she's a prostitute. She's not even a licensed massage therapist. They both knew that they were coming for consensual sex. She's not even honest with you about what she does for a living, and you're going to believe her story. So that would hurt her in that way. But just the fact alone, it doesn't necessarily mean she's not. Doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen.
One thing I want to ask, and this is, we get a lot of knee-jerk reactions from fans, and we've seen this kind of bipolar kind of thing. There is just so much black and white, and there's just not any gray.
Yeah.
A lot of people suggesting, and Jimmy Haslam actually addressed in his press conference afterwards, that it appeared to him that more people were renewing season tickets than canceling them. The notion of, I'm not going to watch this team anymore. I mean, on this program, for the comments that I receive and from what I'm hearing from people, there's a lot of that sentiment, and it's all morality and ethics in different people's minds. Let me ask you this. There were 3 to 4 teams really in the running for DeShaun Watson. And when a guaranteed $230 million come hell or high water $230 million package came to the table, it was too rich for the blood of both the Saints and the Falcons.
Allegedly.
Now, do you look at this as a moral bidding on a player or an immoral act by the teams that were going after him so hot and heavy with these accusations still in the wind?
I actually view it as pretty straightforward. And I think one of the I really like Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry because they look and everything they've done, and they sound like no BS logical guys. Like I think both of these guys are brilliant. I think Andrew Berry is brilliant. And every time I hear him speak and every time I hear his opinions, I'm impressed. And the thing that impresses me most about him is he consistently sounds like he has an analysis. He has a structure. He has an understanding of why he's doing things. A lot of people don't know why they're doing things, which is pretty scary when you think about it. But I think what probably happened is, and why I don't view it as immoral, is I think they made a simple decision. They said, we're going to investigate diligently. What if we come to the conclusion that we don't think DeShaun Watson is I don't even know what word you want to use, a bad guy, if we don't come to the conclusion that he's a criminal, if we don't come to the conclusion that he's immoral, if we just come to the conclusion that he might solicit women for sex and it's consensual, if that's the worst thing we find out about him, then we don't care what the public thinks. We feel comfortable that he's a good human being that can represent our franchise. And so let's pursue him as if he's Tom Brady. You know, it would be less weird if they gave him only $10 million, but they're still saying we'll pay you to play football. If you're going to make the decision that he's good enough to represent your franchise, if you're going to make the decision that, as they said, we think he fits with our standards of character, if you've made that decision, you should be willing to pay him exactly what you would have without these allegations. The only reason you should pay him less is because you have leverage. And he's such a good quarterback and he's so young. It's interesting that leverage for everybody sort of disappeared. And I think that's why people are disgusted by it.
Now, address the anger and concern from women specifically about the picture that this could potentially paint, assuming that out of 21 or 22 women, I mean, we already have an indication that some of those 21, 22 that are currently on board with the civil suit it was really iffy sounding in the way that it was presented. But assuming that there's one or two or three people who were actually violated in all this, how do you explain to women that the system is fair in coming to a just decision based on your experience in civil court?
I guess I don't understand the question. You're asking how would the Browns explain to women that DeShaun Watson's going to get what's deserving?
No, basically the question is women will immediately feel that they are underrepresented and underheard when they are victims of these crimes. What can you say, not about one person's opinion or another, but the legal system itself in the way it's set up in civil court that would at least let people know that a fair rendering would end up being accomplished?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an interesting point because, when the grand jury didn't issue their indictments, you have a lot of people, especially maybe some women, saying, there's no justice, et cetera, et cetera. The civil system is about as just as you can get. I mean, judges are very often women, and so there might be a female judge in any of these cases. There's almost certainly going to be a few female judges in these cases, and so it's going to come down to a jury system, which is, I mean, frankly, as bad of an option as it is, in my opinion, it's kind of the best option for determining facts. What else can we do? Get 12 people in a room and ask what they think. You're going to get either a jury system or the women are going to determine they don't want to pursue anymore because they realize their case isn't strong. But the only potential situation for another view of injustice from that perspective would be if DeShaun Watson wins a motion for summary judgment, which basically is when the court looks at the case and looks at the facts and says, I'm sorry.
Just summary. Yeah.
So motion for summary judgment is you file a motion with the court and you basically say, we've done all of our discovery. Here's all the facts that are going to come out in trial. There's no reasonable jury that can conclude that I lose. So you must just grant me judgment. Sort of, an easy way to think about it would be, let's say they do all this discovery and the only piece of evidence that the plaintiffs have is just the testimony. Just one woman saying, he grabbed my butt and I didn't like it. And DeShaun Watson has a text message from her that says, I loved when you grabbed my ass. Can we do it again tomorrow? He's probably going to win summary judgment, right? Because no reasonable jury can conclude that she is entitled to judgment. And so he's going to win. Outside of that, justice is going to take place. It's going to be up to the women or it's going to be up to a jury.
Now, the settlement is not going to be made public, most likely if a settlement is arrived at.
Yeah, almost certainly it wouldn't. It's going to be up to them.
So that will rage on forever.
He might want it to be. Imagine if, let's just imagine for a second that he is completely innocent, that every single encounter was consensual. The women at one point might be like, we'll take, $100. Who knows? And if I'm DeShaun Watson, I want to show, yeah, we settled for like $1,000 a piece. That's how bad these cases were. And I think even people that are skeptical would go, he only paid them, a couple $1,000. That looks really bad for them.
Right. So what other questions to people on the panel or the chat room? Anything else in there, Rocks, that is worth a doggone?
I had another question. And
Okay.
I've been throughout the week you've been in Twitter Spaces, and I've heard this, but I just wanted to ask again.
Yeah.
I saw there was in Houston, one of DeShaun Watson's longtime masseuses, she came out and said that all of her experiences were good with him and she hasn't seen anything weird. So I know there's a lot of women saying that they've had similar, just like with her, that everything's been good. What weight do you think
18
that
came out and signed a document.
Yeah,
Right.
so I just wanted to hear what weight does that have and what do you think would need to be said to maybe be more than what they're saying?
I personally put almost no weight on that. I put no weight on that. And here's why. Moo, if I say, if you come to my house and you punch me and I sue you for assault, is it going to help you to have 18 people that say, Moo comes to my house all the time, he's never hit me?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure.
Right.
Very good
And this
point.
is something I've talked about in the Twitter space. Here's what he really needs, and it doesn't sound like he has, but here's what would be amazing for him. A masseuse that says, he DM'd me, I showed up, he took his towel off, I put it on, he had an erection, and I said, you're making me uncomfortable, what's going on? And he said, I'm so sorry, I thought you were into this, I won't do this. And he puts his towel on, and I gave him a massage, and I laughed, and everything was fine. If that person exists, that's everything. Because that demonstrates DeShaun Watson does not want to make women feel uncomfortable, and he knows what no means, right? By having 18 masseuses that say, I just do massages for him and everything's fine, that just says DeShaun Watson gets massages and doesn't hit on women. We're hoping sometimes that's true. Presumably he gets male massages and doesn't hit on the males. So that doesn't do anything for me.
All right.
Would
Any other
that
questions?
serve though to create pressure in the court of public opinion? Would that exert some type of pressure for them to go ahead and settle for a lower amount, perhaps? If the public opinion is that they think that this person is being railroaded.
I don't think so, because if I'm a plaintiff, I don't care what the public perception is, right? Like, I only care what the public perception is insofar as it will affect my jury. And even then, though, I mean, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but if I'm a plaintiff's attorney, I'm optimistic that we can get a good jury. I'm optimistic that we can get a fair jury. So I wouldn't be so concerned as a plaintiff with public perception. I would just be concerned with how much money can I get? Because that's all that's what they want, right? They want money. They're in a civil suit. Again, there's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, so a case like this is a potentially large case for Tony Busby.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yes.
I mean, so the validity is this is what he does for a living. And I think that people really want to personalize this, but the system grants opportunities for both sides to be defended. I mean, this is what he does for a living. So, there's no reason for me to attack Rusty Hardin or to attack Tony Busby. They're doing their jobs. That's part of the mechanism of the court. So that's why I don't get excited about this right now, because there has to be a meeting of minds and there will be a settlement. And the only thing I don't like about the whole story is you're never going to know what the settlement was, and people will continue to rant on like they're currently doing, blithely ignorant.
Yeah, but I mean, how many times do we ever really know the truth about what happened in certain situations? It's I agree with you, but these women could come out tomorrow and all say we lied for money, and there will still be people that's like, no, they're just succumbing to the pressure. DeShaun Watson could come out tomorrow and say, okay, I made some mistakes. I'm sorry. These women are valid. I'm going to give him some money. And defenders would say, no, he's just trying to get rid of the case and get on with his life. So no matter what happens, you're never going to make everybody happy.
All right, last call at the bar here, folks. If anybody has any last questions of Blake,
I had another question.
Yes.
So I've seen Busby that a lot of people have been making connections that he has, I guess, interacted in the past with the Texans owner, and some people have gone as far as to say some of the women has worked in the Texas organization. Do you think Watson can use that in any way, or is that kind of just allegations that are just not going to do anything to the case?
I mean, I would have to know more facts about what is actually going on there. But the only thing I can, surmise off the top of my head that would lead to is some sort of conspiracy involving the Texans owner and these plaintiffs. The reason why this has never made any sense to me is the only entity that was hurt more after these allegations than DeShaun Watson's brand was the Houston Texans. This was terrible for the Houston Texans. They had to pay DeShaun Watson $30 million last year to sit on the bench, right? They had to deal with the circus surrounding their whole team and the media. And now they get rid of him for 3 first-round picks finally. They maybe could have gotten more. It would not surprise me if last year, when DeShaun Watson's a year younger, hasn't sat out a year, and has no allegations, the Houston Texans could have gotten 3 first-round picks in 2 seconds, right? So if I'm the Houston Texans, this was an awful situation for my organization, and I don't understand why people are skeptical that they were involved.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that. What sort of compensation do you think Houston would have gotten, and also DeShaun Watson would have gotten, had these allegations not existed? And I think you're right. Houston would have gotten a lot more picks, and Watson probably would have gotten more guaranteed money even.
Maybe.
Do you think that, or?
Yeah, the only thing that makes me think maybe he wouldn't have gotten more guaranteed money is because I think the Browns and these other teams, after their investigation, determined we're going to pay him the same thing we would have paid him before because we think we've investigated and we're comfortable with it. But I do think he would have gotten more picks. Simply, the Texans would have gotten more picks simply because he's a year younger, and they don't have to worry about the PR.
All right, there is one thing that I do. 19 years I've been doing this.
Oh, you're going to make them. Oh, you are.
Yes, I am.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, I know. Look, I'm sorry. Every person who is of any renown whatsoever who appears in this program has to moo. Okay?
Jesus Christ.
I know. It's just a thing. And the reason I do this is so that I can see the look on the face that I'm looking at with Blake right now. This is a Georgetown Hoya, folks. This is a proud man. But I will let you know that I have had owners of baseball teams moo. I've had professional NFL coaches moo. So,
moo.
See, and that's the human side. Don't let anyone tell you that attorneys aren't human.
I didn't know that was up for debate.
Could you do us a favor, Blake, and keep in touch with us? Because, I like to have a lifeline on these things, and this is going to be a kind of a story that's flowing, that moves. It's not something that's going to be static and stay still. And I'd like to be able to keep in touch with you. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Of course. I'm happy to.
Very good. I can't thank you enough for joining us on the program and taking your time. And thank you for the stuff that you're putting up on Twitter, trying to educate people about what is really being in these complaints as opposed to these extrapolations that people are putting on the internet. And, you can get a hold of me anytime, and I'll contact you as things roll.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. And thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. And we hope that we put this in some perspective for you. I'm not trying to change minds, only trying to educate myself, and at the same time to allow people to listen to both sides of an argument from somebody who doesn't have a dog in the fight. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back again come Monday for the next Moohead Radio show. And thanks for the participation in the chat room. And Tony and Bronk, and of course, Blake and Rox and Double P, thanks for joining us. And until next time, hasta la vista, Pastor Hedge. Good night.